The last 8 weeks already, we've been on this journey of awe and wonder. And we're coming to the end of, the 8 weeks of the preaching. But that's not because it's like, we're done, no more awe and wonder for you, and we're done, it's the next thing. It's because, hey, we've just spent 8 weeks investing in our life to rediscover how amazing God is and to be awestruck with him again and continually wonder about how amazing he is. So over the last 8 weeks, we should have built some really good habits in our life, right? You don't look at a sunset or a sunrise the same. It's not just pretty colours in the sky. It's God just shouting out again, I love you, here's more of my beauty. And you don't look at another person the same because God made them too. And God is in all of us. Over the last few weeks, we've talked about things like being still. That practicing stillness helps us to see God and find God. We've talked about starting each day with a moment to connect with God and not setting a time on it that goes, okay, I've got 3 minutes and that's it. But just setting time because you want to be with him and you want to connect with him and you're just going to wait on him. And then when you feel him come, you just rest into that. It's not a striving of I've got to pray for enough things or do enough things, but it's just I want to meet with God and I want to be with him and rest in his presence. And we've talked about the idea that rest is the very gateway to entering God's presence, that we don't have to work for God's presence. We don't have to be good for him to give us his presence. But we talked about the fact that God just invites us in because he loves us. And in that, we did talk about the idea of being intentional when we come to God. Like, remember that lady we talked about who came with the really expensive perfume to pour it on the feet of Jesus? She came on purpose with intention to give him a gift. And we need to come sometimes with intention to give God a gift. And those are just a few of the gems that we uncovered in the last 8 weeks. There's some pretty good moments there, right? And you can go back over our podcast, which you'll find on our website, and you can listen to all those messages again. But I know that definitely in these last 8 weeks, I've had moments of rediscovering, wow, God, you are truly amazing. Well, God, the things you do are truly amazing. And all these moments of beholding God in awe and wonder, they translate into change in our own hearts, right? You can't meet with the God of the universe and not walk away a little bit different. It's pretty impossible, right? And see, the thing is that when we're with God, his presence changes us. Why is that? Because of the simple truth that we're going to talk about today. This simple truth is we become what we behold. Just let that sink in for a second. We become like what we behold. So as I behold God in awe and wonder, I should become a little more like him each time, right? It changes my thoughts, my attitudes, my words, the way I make decisions. It should all be affected by being with him if I am spending time beholding him in awe and wonder. Now, as a follower of Jesus, I desire Christ-likeness. I want to look a bit more like him, sound a bit more like him, and it's essential that I behold him in order to do that. And if someone is listening to this today or they're not a follower of Jesus yet, don't go, ugh, I don't behold God, so this message isn't for me. No, this principle applies to anything in life. What you choose to behold, you are going to become. So this is going to help you build into your life who you want to be. If I want to be a really good guitarist, I'm probably not going to hang around with people who know nothing about music, right? Or if I want to, learn how to be someone who knows how to do handy things, right, with their hands and knows how to use drills and I don't know what other tools are because I'm not a handy person, right? A screwdriver. I know how to use a screwdriver, right? I'm going to hang around with people who are handy and I'm going to watch them and I'm going to behold what they do so that I can become that. So this principle applies to anything in your life. What you focus on, you're going to move towards. So you become like what you behold, and this is true for everyone. And for me, I know I want to be more like Jesus. So the only way it's going to happen is to behold him in awe and wonder. There is a pastor and theologian, and his name is Sam Storms, and he says this: "We become like that which we behold. We will never be transformed into the likeness of God or be conformed into the image of Christ Jesus until we learn how to behold his beauty. To see him is to be like him. As David beheld the beauty of the Lord as he meditated on the glorious perfections and passions of God's character, he became more like God. More than that, he fell ever more in love with God." It is impossible to be like God if we don't spend time looking at God, finding out who God is, discovering his beauty. To see him is to be like him. What an amazing concept. We become what we behold. You know, back in 1820, there was a poet and author called William Blake, and he's often attributed to writing these words: "We become what we behold." But this idea existed long before 1820. He was just one of the first modern people to actually jot it down. But back in the year 1970 BC, or somewhere between there and 697 BC, we can never be quite too sure about these things. Somewhere in between there was a man whose name was King Solomon. He was the wisest man ever to have lived, beside Jesus, right? And King Solomon said these words in the book of Proverbs. He said, "My son, be attentive to my words, incline your ear to my sayings. Let them not escape from your sight. Keep them within your heart. For they are life to those who find them and healing to all their flesh." And then he says this: "Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life." What was he saying? Solomon is saying, keep an eye on your heart. Keep an eye on what you let in and keep an eye on what you let out. Watch what you focus on. Our heart is kind of like the epicenter of our being. It's like our soul. It's that part of us that feels, that thinks, that processes what we're going through. And Solomon's saying, keep an eye on that, because what you let in and out of your heart, what you breed in there, that's the life you're going to create for yourself. Solomon knew that our attention directs our life. Our focus determines who we become and what we do, how we act, and our attitudes. It's kind of like this cycle that feeds itself. In the book of Proverbs, he also says this: "For as a man or woman thinketh in their heart, so they are," right? So this is what kind of happens. We think about stuff, or something comes in front of us, a situation, an opportunity, a person, a thing. It's something that presents itself as an opportunity to focus on and behold, right? And if we ponder on these things, we start to accept them as truth and elevate them in their attention in our lives. We then are influenced by what we give attention to, how it will impact the thing we ponder on, thinketh in our heart. That thing is going to affect how we treat others, how we relate to ourselves, how we think about God. It all starts because we chose to put our attention on something, think about it, and value it. It's this cycle of we become the things that we behold. There was another man whose name was Paul, and he lived a long time after Solomon. Paul lived in the times of and after Jesus. And Paul was one of the guys who started most of the churches in the New Testament as well. And one day he was writing a letter to one of the churches in Corinth. He was writing to them to talk about the new covenant we have with Jesus. And in his letter, Paul says to them, hey, you guys used to have a set of laws that was written on stone. You know, you've all watched the 10 Commandments. That's the set of laws written on stone. It actually comes from the Bible. True story. And Paul said that law was given in such glory that when Moses was up the mountain meeting with God face to face, so Moses was beholding God, when he comes down from the mountain, his face is shining so much that people are like, whoa, go cover your face, man. We can't look at you. That's the amount of glory that covenant was made in. And Paul's saying, if that covenant was given with so much glory, then for a minute, think about how much glory is in the new covenant, which is Jesus, because Jesus fulfilled every requirement of the law so that we don't have to jump through hoops anymore. We only have to believe in Jesus. So how much more glory does that new covenant have? And in this letter, it's found in 2 Corinthians 3:18. Paul then writes something quite profound, and it's kind of this clincher, because he says here, because of Jesus and what Jesus did on the cross, there's no cover required between us and the glory of God. So back then, when in the law of, that was written on tablets of stone, there was a veil that was required because the glory was too great for the people. But Paul's saying now, there's no veil that is required between us and God, no veil that is required between us and Jesus. In fact, God's flinging wide heaven going, come into my glory. I want you in it. I don't want to hide you from it or shield you from it. I want it in it, because then you will be transformed by it. Paul says this in 2 Corinthians 3:18, and we all with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. And it's a little bit louder in the Amplified, but I like this version. It says, and we all with unveiled face, continually seeing as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are progressively being transformed into his image from one degree of glory to even more glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. See, Paul knew that as followers of Jesus, we have this incredible access to behold God like never before. In some churches, you'll find that you're not given this information, that you can just access God and his glory. Sometimes they put a middleman in between and say, you got to pray to me and I'll pray to God for you. Or you've got to come and cover your face and all these things. But this is saying the opposite. It's saying come with unveiled face. Come with nothing separating you and God. Come with no middleman, because you don't need one, because Jesus came, stood in between you and God sees you righteous in between him and Jesus. You see, we don't need a veiled face. Sometimes we can put our own veils on. We can go, God, I'm guilty of this. God, I feel shame about this. And when we start to feel unworthy, we put this gap between us and God. And sometimes it can even look like we put our own barriers and our own list of little hoops I've got to jump through to be good enough for God. But if you believe in Jesus and you have made him your Lord and Savior, and you accept what he did for you on the cross as the done deal of sin is finished and I have eternal life, then you need nothing between you and God, because he has removed that. There's no veil. He wants you to come and behold him and come into his glory. And what does it say happens when we behold the glory with an unveiled face? It says we're being transformed into his glory from one degree of glory to another. So as you behold him, you become like him, because what you behold, you become. So how do I behold him? Well, how do you behold you? If beholding is to look and gaze, how do you behold you, guys? I'll give you a hint. A mirror. I'll give you a hint. See my lovely prop here today, my big mirror from home? This is how you behold you. Hi, everyone. And this is how we're meant to behold God, like looking in a mirror. So have you ever watched a young person, a lady probably, getting ready for a night to go out? Have you ever watched them? Right. Well, let me tell you what it looks like, right? That might be in front of the bathroom or the bedroom mirror, and it's not for like 5 minutes. It's not the 5-minute quick shower, shave, gel in my hair like a man is and out the door, right? It's not like that. No. We're there for a while, okay? We're there for quite a while. Why? Because we're looking, we're studying, we're checking, we're getting a little closer. Did I miss a spot? Is everything blended in okay? And then when you think you're right, you'll walk out of the house, and if there's a mirror, just, in our house, there's a mirror on the way out the door. You'll give another quick head check on the way out the door. You'll get to the car, which is 3 meters from where you just left. What will you do? Pull down the visor, open the car mirror, just check again that nothing's changed in that time walking from the house to the car. And then once you're where you're going, right, if you walk past a nice reflective glass shop window or something, you'll just double check and catch your reflection yet again in that mirror. Why? Because you spent that time beholding yourself. You knew what you looked like when you left, and you're just checking that your reflection is the same. Is it the same reflection that I remember? Am I reflecting what I thought I saw when I left, right? So beholding is about what we look like. Is about what we look at, our gaze and our focus. And to behold God is like looking in a mirror. It's not looking in a mirror because I don't look there and go, woohoo, there's God. It's like the act of looking in a mirror, right? To look in a mirror is to use the ways we know we can connect with God. So we're using the mirror as this analogy of how do I behold God? How do I connect with God? We know this, guys. We've gone over it the last 8 weeks. How do I connect? I worship him. I sing songs to him. I pray. I just talk to him like a normal person talks to someone else. I will look at his word and I won't just read it and walk away, but I'll think about it and I'll study it a little bit longer, because if I think about that verse and repeat it a few times to myself, I start to know what God looks like. And when I meditate on that, I am beholding that, and lo and behold, that is what I will become. And it's about a long gaze in a mirror. When we study Jesus, what does he look like? What does he sound like? What is he saying to me? What is he saying about me? We behold him as in a mirror. Now, the mirror can be a confronting place, right? Because one day you're young and hip, and the next day you wake up and there's lines and grey hair somewhere, right? And I know that for me, right, sometimes I look and it's like, yep, I'm okay, and I'll leave really quickly. Like, yep, that's fine. But sometimes you just get in there, right, and you're looking going, oh, that needs a lift and that needs a tuck, and can that be worked on? And, you see things in the mirror and it's not always pretty, right? Sometimes the mirror's raw. Sometimes it reflects things that we didn't know were there. Oh, gosh, where did that spot come from? But this is the thing about the mirror, right? When we behold Jesus as in a mirror, right, we look past who we are. We look past our circumstance. We look past what I might need to get done today. We look past those things and spend time beholding Jesus as in a mirror. What we see is his glory. And when you see his glory, when you go back to the mirror and look at yourself, you see yourself differently. Why? Because you've spent time beholding him. And when you behold him, you get to know what he thinks about you and what he says about you and how he values you. You can't have absolute love and value for God and not know how much he loves and values you. So every line and every crease and every grey hair becomes a life lived and a reason to amen instead of oh goodness, I need work on myself, right? But here's what we're talking about. We're talking about beholding him as in a mirror, seeing who he really is, seeing this endless sea of glory, being amazed by him and then changed because of him. It's not just choosing to look God's way and shooting him a pity glance like, yeah, I can see you there, God. But it's going, I choose to elevate who you are in my life above everything else fighting for my attention. And I choose to look at you with awe and wonder, a life above all the noise, a life that says I remove the veils between me and God. And I behold him and I'm transformed by him. Beholding him is in the power of our gaze. We become what we behold. So how am I changed from glory to glory? How am I changed? Well, it's something God just kind of does, right? It's not something we do. Our part is the part of beholding him, and it's something he just sort of does. When we come intentionally and prepared and we be still before God, when we focus on him and we behold him, we get changed from glory to glory. That's what Paul wrote in Corinthians. When we behold God, a lot of it kind of happens in our thinking. Do you remember a few weeks ago when I talked about loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And I said that was how we also needed to look at God in awe and wonder. We needed to engage all of us. We needed to engage our bodies and kind of go, I'm going to be still in this moment. We needed to engage our heart and our soul, so our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And we needed to engage our mind, because if we're not focused on God, we're thinking about lunch at 12:30 instead of what God is wanting to do in that moment, right? So we behold God in our thinking, and our minds, incredible that they are actually renewed and transformed by knowledge of God. Did you know that? That if you spend time with God, beholding God, thinking about God, and reading His Word starts to change our mind and make us new. In Colossians 3:10, it says, put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of His Creator. And in Romans 12:2, it says, don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect, right? So what is this kind of saying? It's saying choose to think about God. Choose to behold Him in your mind, and you'll start to think more like He thinks. Your thoughts will be renewed and transformed after the knowledge of your Creator. Because you're spending time beholding Him, your mind will think differently. Remember, Solomon said, as we think in our heart, so we are. We get to choose. Am I going to allow the world around me to shape my thinking? Or will my gaze be turned to what I see? Will my gaze be turned to what I see around me? Or will I keep my gaze on Jesus and let Him be the loudest influence in my mind? Now, it's hard to do that because there are a lot of things vying for our attention. But how do I keep my mind fixed on Jesus? Let's take a little bit more advice from Paul from Philippians 4:8. He says, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Why does he tell you to think about those things? Because those things will lead you back to Jesus every single time. If you're thinking about truth and honor and justice and purity and love and praiseworthy things, they're going to lead you back to Jesus every time. Our life is always going to move in the direction of our greatest influences. And sometimes we do behold other things in the place Jesus should occupy. Shock horror, right? We're humans. It's just one of our infallible things that we do. We know what we should do, but we get distracted. We get off course. Our gaze will shift. Sometimes it happens on purpose. Sometimes stuff just creeps in and it takes our attention where we should be placing it on Jesus. So sometimes we can look to the problems in the world. We can look to the news. We can look to crime, government, social issues. We can look to those things and we behold them more than we behold God. And when that happens, the world becomes a dark place quickly. Fear starts to get hold of us. Sometimes we can become angry and frustrated. And guess what? If I'm beholding the Channel 9 news in the mirror and that's what's feeding me, that's what I'm going to be reflecting to everybody else. Or sometimes I behold things that are a little bit closer to home. It might be me or someone who's sick or unwell, like, something really bad. Or there might be some relationship strains or problems between family and friends. And if these issues are the things that are constantly forefront of my mind, I'm not giving God the opportunity to renew my mind and transform it. I'm staying stuck in the reality of problems, and that's what I'm going to be reflecting to everybody else. The reality of my problems, not the hope that Jesus can bring. And what about sometimes it's something like what we choose to listen to or what we choose to watch. It can be TV, it can be music, it can be apps, newspapers, social media, the scrolling, YouTube. It can be all of that. Now, those things on their own are not bad, but how much am I giving them attention? How much am I beholding those things? How much influence are they having on me? You know, sometimes we're these high-strung, highly stressed out human beings who are always expecting the worst at every turn, and we don't know why. It's because what we're feeding ourselves and what we're thinking about is what we're becoming. So think about you and think about some things that you might sometimes get distracted with. How are you affected when you behold in a mirror something other than Jesus? What does it do to your reflection? Are you still going from glory to glory? Do you still look like someone who's following Jesus and puts him first? Do you still feel like someone who's following Jesus and putting him first? Do you see the beauty of God around you, or are you dull to it because the weight of everything else is taking its place in your world? You see, I know life happens and you cannot run or escape from the realities that hard things happen. And every time something happens, you can't just go, sorry, not paying attention to that. You know, little Johnny skinned his knee, suck it up, I need to go behold God. It's not that we don't pay attention to things that happen and realities. It's that in spite of that, I will still put my focus and my attention on God, and I will look to him in those situations. Anything that happens, anything we allow in to feed us, our TV, our media, the world's problems, the situation, we can be informed. I'm not saying don't be informed. I'm not saying bury your head in the sand. I'm saying these things should not be elevated in our heart and mind to the position and influence that Jesus should have. We become what we behold. What are we choosing to behold? Because this is what we're going to reflect. Now, if you're here today, it's because you're part of a church that says we want to make Jesus famous. And if we want to make Jesus famous, the way I see it, a life of awe and wonder is absolutely not negotiable. It's only by choosing to look at him and to see him and to behold him that we're changed from glory to glory. This is how Jesus is made famous in me. And that's how he's made famous in you. You will only be able to fulfill the very first part of our existence as a church to make Jesus famous if we behold him and are changed from glory to glory. Because if I look like everyone else, no one's going to know that I belong to a church. No one's going to know that I have something different in me that they need as well. It's by beholding him and being changed from glory to glory that he's made famous in me. And then we reflect that, guys. When that change happens in us, we reflect that. What I think, what I say, what I do, how I treat others, this is how Jesus is then made famous in my city, in my community, to my family, to the people around me. We become what we behold. And as a follower of Jesus, you're invited into this credible experience of beholding Jesus as in a mirror, looking at the face of God unveiled, without separation between you and him, because Jesus has removed every blockage and every barrier and every veil between you and God. He, like we said, we talked about it at communion, he has removed all our guilt and all our shame. He's removed the requirements of religious living so that we can have access to God. And when we have this access to God, we see him in all his beauty. We behold him in awe and wonder. And then we are transformed from one degree of glory to the next. How do we do it? We behold him. We choose him. We set our gaze on him. We choose to let him be the greatest influence in our lives, because we all will become what we behold.